I'm really hoping we can get football back on time, both college and pro, with NFL training camps set to open later this month and the regular season set to kick off on September 13th. The preseason is very much in limbo right now, and that's actually what I wanted to talk about next. The NFL Players Association, and this is a big story, they voted unanimously to cancel the entire preseason. The players don't think it's worth the risk, and I get it. The travel, the exposure for games that don't count in standings, I think it's one of the strongest statements we have received from the NFL players. To me, it's a great measure of how they truly, really feel about the preseason. And for everything you hear about the long shots, right, and the guys at the bottom of the roster who need a chance to break through and to make a name for themselves, and there are more guys like that in the NFL compared to the number of starters making big-time money, and the fact that the union, the entire workforce, was able to come together and say, we don't want a preseason. Like, that tells you everything you really need to know about how players actually feel about those preseason games. And that is that they are just not that important. And sometimes coaches exaggerate, I think, how important they are. The owners do also, because they make a lot of money off those games. Like, they sell those games to local stations in each market. Like, for example, the Packers sell their games to Green Bay and Milwaukee TV stations. Same with the Bears in Chicago TV station. Same with the Giants on Channel 4 in New York. The Jets on Channel 2 in New York. There's big money involved in preseason football where the players aren't even making their full salary yet. So that is why the owners like it so much, even though they know, and Roger Goodell himself has said it before many times, that the preseason product stinks. But that's actually not what this conversation is all about. I don't want this to be like a discussion about, is exhibition football important? I want it to be about a certain team. And I actually think if there is one team in the NFL, and this also has a little bit to do with the other big story from a pure football perspective in the NFL right now, I think if there is one team that is set to capitalize on this very strange, weird-looking offseason, I think the New England Patriots are poised to prove once and for all that Tom Brady was not the only reason, I should say, why there are 6 Lombardi trophies in Robert Kraft's office, why there are 6 rings on Bill Belichick's fingers, and why he is the most accomplished football coach of all time. It's not just because of Tom Brady, and I think we're going to see that play out this year. I think it is going to end up being, when Bill Belichick's career is compared against others, right? I think this year is going to go down as one of the seasons that we bring up right away to set him apart from everyone else. Now, on a personal level, I'll say this. I'm not a huge Bill Belichick fan, as you guys know, root for the New York Jets. I think he cheated, and the Spygate thing was huge. Like, I think that without it, the Patriots don't win all 3 of those Super Bowls early in Tom Brady's career. I think they're still a good team, but not a dynasty if they don't do and execute Spygate. And I say that because if it wasn't that helpful, if it didn't give them that big of an edge, then I don't think Bill Belichick does it for 8 consecutive years, as it was proven after. And I think when Ray Anderson and the NFL sends out a letter that threatens punishment and says if Bill Belichick isn't getting a big edge from it, I think he shuts it down. But he didn't, because it was helpful and it did help him. I don't think any coach puts that amount of time into something if the difference or advantage didn't make that big of an impact. So that's number 1 right off the top. I also think that Cam Newton and the addition of Cam gives us an idea of what exactly the Patriots will be in 2020. Because without Cam, the Jared Stidham or Brian Hoyer experiment would have happened. And well, with Brian Hoyer, I feel like there is a clear ceiling on what you can do. And with Stidham, there is some unknown. But with Cam Newton, he is a proven commodity in the NFL. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's won an MVP. He gets hurt a lot and is 31 years old. Like, there are obvious things about him that make you second guess his ability to lead a team to a championship. You don't get a player at a wholesale price. You don't get him at such a bargain, right? Without some of those defects or without that kind of injury history. But there is a reason why he's only getting paid, a salary of $500,000, and that is because he had a shoulder injury and a Wiz Frank injury to his foot, and he's not necessarily in one piece going into the season. But the Patriots get something. They get a wrinkle or element to their offense, right, that they haven't had since Bill Belichick has been their head coach, and that is now mobility. Bill Belichick grew up in football. His dad worked at Navy as a football coach. We know what Navy's offense is, and Bill Belichick is schooled in that offense. I think Bill Belichick was jealous of the Ravens this past year. I think he understands as a defensive coach how hard it is to defend 11 players instead of 10 when you have to account for the quarterback and how he gets that kind of player in Cam Newton now. I don't know if he's built to last, but I don't think this is a long-term relationship necessarily. But I think it's something that could absolutely work, especially this year. I think Cam Newton makes the Patriots a Super Bowl contender. I think the Patriots will be fine this year without Tom Brady. The Patriots over-under right now is 9.5 wins, and to be honest with you, off the bat, I think they go over. I just started this conversation telling you that this is going to be a very strange offseason. When I say that, I mean season getting ready for football. We have already had the offseason in terms of the draft and free agency, but I mean training camp and getting guys prepared to play football. And for me, when in doubt, go with the great coach. I'm going to trust Bill Belichick in a funky training camp, no preseason world to get his Patriots ready to play better than Adam Gase in New York or Sean McDermott in Buffalo. If Bill Belichick could go 11-5 with Matt Castle as his starting quarterback in 2008, you're telling me that with Cam Newton at even 75% of what he used to be in Carolina, give me a reason why the Patriots this year can't win double-digit games. They still have a really good defensive setup. The Patriots have spent a ton of money on Joe Thuney and the interior portion of their offensive line. I think they're making it obvious to everyone that they will be a run-first, play-defense type team, and that running component isn't, an I formation with a fullback, a tailback, handed off to Sony Michel 25 times a game. It's not pro-style running. It's read option, college-style offense with a quarterback who has more rushing touchdowns than any quarterback in the history of the NFL. It's that style of football with a brilliant coach that I think has wanted to play this way for years, but wasn't going to do it and force Brady out to do it. When you're winning Super Bowls, right, it doesn't really matter how you're doing it. What I respect the most about Bill Belichick is he will change what the Patriots are week to week depending on the personnel the Patriots have and who they are playing. And I think that is easier said than done, and a lot of coaches preach that, but I don't think many have the brains or the coaching to pull it off. I think Bill Belichick does. New England Super Bowl odds right now are 17-1, which is the same as the Dallas Cowboys. Who would you rather have right now? Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott? Who knows what's happening with that team regarding Dak's contract situation and all their drama? Or the New England Patriots? I think the reports of the Patriots' death now that Tom Brady has moved on are a little premature. And in the AFC, yeah, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be really good and really tough to beat. They have given me no reason to doubt them. Now, if Chris Jones, who we spoke about a little bit on this show on Friday, pulls a Le'Veon Bell, that would be a consideration and something that has to be taken into account. I don't think that the Chiefs can necessarily make up for that. What I think was low key about the Chiefs last year was the defensive transformation and hiring the right defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo. When you look at head coaches, the people they find to work for them is huge in football. And we don't talk about it enough. Like, Andy Reid went out there and fired Bob Sutton, a longtime defensive coordinator of his, when his defense literally couldn't get off the field once to save their life against Tom Brady, the Patriots, in the 2018 AFC Championship game. And then when you look at it, he hired Steve Spagnuolo to be his new defensive coordinator. And really, that move won the Chiefs a Super Bowl. They became a top 10 defense. They turned it on. They shut down Derrick Henry in the AFC Championship game when, at the time going into that game, he was playing like he was the best running back in football. Just ask the Baltimore Ravens. Just ask the New England Patriots. And then in the second half of the Super Bowl, I think they kind of scared Jimmy Garoppolo and had him playing scared football. So the Kansas City Chiefs are number one in the AFC. I'm not going to deny that. But after that, I actually think the Patriots could be the second best team in the AFC this year. And you might say, how about Baltimore? And I respect John Harbaugh. I think the Ravens are, they were 14-2 last year. I think they were unlikely to go from 14-2 to 6-10 overnight. I don't see that happening necessarily. But what I will say is this. Almost everything went right for them last year. And how often do we see that happen in the NFL, let alone 2 seasons in a row for the same team? Their quarterback stayed healthy, even though he played a style that really doesn't always have players staying healthy for a long period of time. Just look at Cam Newton's career. It's very hard to do it that way. They made a great trade in the middle of last season for Marcus Peters, and they got him on his best behavior. He usually, when you look at his career in Kansas City and in LA with the Rams, he wears out his welcome on teams. So let's see if year 2 goes as good as year 1. Baltimore also lost one of the best offensive linemen in the past decade in Marshall Yanda, and they replaced him with a journeyman guard and a middle round draft pick. So good luck with that. You also look at the Baltimore Ravens and see that they play in the AFC North. And I actually think that the AFC North is going to be one of the good and better, more competitive divisions in the National Football League this year. You look at the Cleveland Browns. They were an utter disaster last year. It's do or die time for Baker Mayfield. I've said it multiple times on this show. If he doesn't produce this year and have a productive season this year, I could very well see the Cleveland Browns moving on from him at the start of 2022. So the Cleveland Browns need to have a good year. So I think they're going to be, at the worst, at the minimum, just as good, if not better, than last year's team. You also look at the Cincinnati Bengals. Same thing with them. They should be much better than last year's team with the addition of Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, a couple veteran guys on defense. They have some, young guys, and maybe they will give that franchise something to look forward to and something to hope for starting with the start of this season. And also the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger should be 100% healthy. You guys know how I feel about that defense. So I think the AFC North is actually a really tough and is going to be a very competitive division. I think the Titans are a one-hit wonder. I don't trust Ryan Tannehill. And who does that leave? The New England Patriots. And I don't say this like as a Patriots supporter at all. I don't root for them, and I think their legacy is stained by the Spygate. But things are kind of working out in their favor this offseason when coaches who are creatures of habit and are set in their ways, when they're forced to do things differently, they don't really succeed usually in those situations. Coaches could talk about fighting adversity and getting over it all they want, but many of them actually don't handle it well at all. But I think Bill Belichick thrives in those situations. He went 11-5 with Matt Castle. I can't say that enough. He'll find a way to have the Patriots ready for week 1, even during these strange times. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure the rest of the NFL will. Now, he's got a quarterback that I do think you have to game plan for. And so we'll see what tricks he has up his sleeve. I'm convinced the Patriots will be really good this year. And the Cam-Bill Belichick connection will make the Patriots a Super Bowl contender. I don't think this is a case of a slow news week in July when Cam Newton signs with the Patriots, so the sports talk radio show hosts have to make something out of nothing. And I get it. Like, his career record is 6-10. His in his last 16 starts, he's 6-10, which is not very good. He's taken a ton of hits, and I don't think there's a ton left in the tank with Cam Newton. But if there was one place where he could go and have some success, I think it's New England, because that coach, as much as I despise him, in some ways, will bring out the best in him. They have the same Super Bowl odds as the Cowboys, and their Vegas over-under is 9.5. Both of those look pretty interesting to me.